Nancy continues, yes, I'm sure they would offer psychiatric services, but only to someone who wants it. And there, again, I thought, you know what? For me, it is always a great opportunity and a great privilege, no matter, to talk to a psychiatrist. It doesn't even matter if I think that the guy has my worst interests in mind. There's something about it, because in order to be a psychiatrist, they have to be smart. And I appreciate that, and I have found within psychiatry and within psychology and the whole field of mental health some really absolutely wonderful, smart, wise people with really good hearts. So in that sense, to be able to speak to a psychiatrist or any professional who understands, in this case, as it turns out, they're dealing with human trafficking, which I didn't know at the time, human trafficking and slavery. But the result is exactly what my life condition is. So it's the result of long-term abuse. And in my case, the abuse is probably, would be described as more sophisticated. It's in kind of a different realm. It's like Hubbard says in battle tactics, it's in the field of thought, or the realm of thought. And that's not totally true, because these guys operate in the real world. But in any case, I would love to speak to psychiatrists who would really be interested in the results of long-term abuse and dealing with the phenomena in a serious study. I think that this is important for a lot of people, and I don't think that I'm unique in that, but in a sense, I would welcome speaking to a psychiatrist in psychiatric services, whereas someone just getting out of the Sea Org, and virtually anyone who calls themselves still a Scientologist, is not going to want psychiatric services. And this definitely caught my eye as odd, but I also had understood, okay, Nancy had, as I understood it, gone through extreme mental phenomena, psychosis, I think it's agreed, and has tied it directly to Scientology. I can understand, or I could understand, why Nancy would be mentioning that, but also why she would be, understanding that it might not be wanted, even though it probably could be like extremely valuable and something that, I'll bet you right now, most Americans are denied. Right? It's not easy to get to talk to a psychiatrist. That's a serious privilege. It isn't like there are so many of them that they're standing on the street corner talking to people. So people who are still Scientologists, but have been denied all of these things in the Sea Org, they would still retain their repugnance or their revulsion regarding psychiatrists, unless, of course, they were operatives of one kind and who were trying to get close to psychiatrists to compromise them in some way. That is a standard operating basis of all kinds of both Scientologists and their clients. But I saw this and I thought, okay, I would welcome psychiatric services. Nancy continues, so please, I'm asking once again, are you or anyone you know who has escaped the Sea Org still have issues that you have not caught up on? So yes, I still have issues I've not caught up on. That's quite obvious. Virtually every Sea Org member is a beneficiary in a contract that the cult has with me, They're a beneficiary in the jail sentences against me. They are all participants in the hate campaign against me, the attempts to beastify me and obliterate me. And I escaped from the Sea Org. I escaped probably really more, as much as other people, those who really have not submitted to routing out. If you rout it out, you can bet that they have neutralized you and stripped you in some way, so you really didn't escape. An escape would avoid routing out. So I accept, however, that somebody routing out was just as abused as someone who specifically escaped. So I understand that a person routing out would have just as much claims, if not more, against the cult, and has been abused even more by virtue of the fact that they routed out rather than escaped. So I accepted that this also included routing out and not just escapees like myself. Nevertheless, I'm a very specific escapee. I did not rout out. She continues, I have clarified that while legal suits may have statutes of limitations, this does not. So what she would be talking about there are specific claims in which an incident, obviously from the victimizer, Scientology, XSO, from the Sea Org, that they've committed. And what was the date of that? And that establishes, or when did you discover it? And that discovers the statute of limitation for these people's claims, my claims, everyone's claims against Scientology. Their statutes of limitation vary according to the tort or the crime to be charged. So, for example, murder in the U.S., there is no statute of limitation on that. It doesn't get wiped out at the end of the statutory time. So I didn't know quite what she meant, but regarding my claims, there is no statute of limitation involved because it's ongoing. Scientology and Scientologists have never ceased at any time to fair game me. They fair game me every day. So that's not the problem. This is an ongoing tort and an ongoing crime and an ongoing violation of my human rights. Okay, Nancy continues. They are very out of the way and under the radar, but it is a net of help that extends across the USA. So I thought again, wow, across the USA, this has to be a massive organization, you know, with the power and connections and will, if they had it, of Catholic Charities. Or that, you know, someone in government had recognized the terrible crime that Scientology was committing against its citizens and was in some weird way, like, finally reaching out through Nancy Maney and through some covert line, which, as she says, very out of the way and under the radar. I thought, that's odd. Okay, this sounds like, okay, there's a couple of billionaires who are involved, and they're throwing like a few $100,000 toward victims if they're willing to come forward. That makes sense. I mean, what would it matter to Bill Gates? Here are people who have been victimized by a cult, a religious cult, and their lives stripped from them, and the crimes, even in relation to the computer and freedom of speech. Everybody on the internet or connected with it should be up in arms about what this cult has done to suppress and destroy people's rights. And Bill Gates should too. So I thought, you know, what would it matter to him? Throw $1 million out and say, this is to victims of Scientology. You know, and hey, you meet my criteria. You know, it makes complete sense. with $10 million and real people who really were in need came forward, wow, you could turn this whole thing around. You would create a groundswell. You would create the reality in which media would pick up on it, and there'd be an investigation into what really is going on. And Scientology would be denied, by virtue of your wisdom in doing so, the opportunity to defend these torts and crimes with the religious defense. That's the insanity of this whole thing. So I thought, okay, could be a billionaire. They're out of the way, fine, under the radar. But it is a net of help that extends across the USA. I don't know. I mean, could be the Presbyterians. I mean, think of all the money the Presbyterians have. They could put it together and bring some litigation against this organization and stand it back on its ears. There are claims out there. So with a little bit of backbone and a couple of attorneys with backbone, an extreme amount can be done with a very little amount of money. And people could have their teeth fixed. And of course, if there was some medical emergency, they could receive that kind of help. So, she continues, please, if anyone has any of these needs or knows of an ex-SO who does, please have them contact me at our email address along with a phone number. I know there are people out there who are in need of help. Please help me connect them to the help. And thanks, Nancy. And so I gave it a great deal of thought. I read it over. I made sure that I was meeting those criteria. I, of course, had some concerns because obviously in the past there have been efforts by Scientology to dominate exactly this kind of a gift or an offering or organization. Anybody who is going to help people who have left the organization immediately became targets. So I think, okay, maybe like Bill Gates understands that, so like he would want to be under the radar, and he would want his really smartest legal people, the ones with a heart or a conscience, to speak to them. So I can understand that. Now I'm going to hunt up the correspondence between Nancy and me.